Thanks again for joining us for today's webinar, Advanced Automation in NinjaOne. Today we're going to talk about automation in NinjaOne and hopefully go beyond some of the introductory stuff you learned in your new customer webinar or in our partner office hours. Before we get started, we do have some housekeeping items to go over. The first is that this webinar will be recorded. You should have access to that recording within the week. Sometimes it's 2 days, sometimes it's 7, but it should be within the week. Please interact amongst yourselves in the chat. We will be checking out the chat and we will be answering questions in the Q&A section. And we will prioritize questions that are put in Q&A. In addition to that, we will prioritize sort of the how-to questions that are relevant to the automation topic that we're going to be talking about today. If you do have roadmap or support questions, please do reach out to your account manager. Although if we see some and they're relevant, we will address those as well. With that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce today's speakers, or let us all introduce ourselves. My name is Pete Breton. I am the Director of Customer and Product Marketing here at Ninja. And I'm going to kill you with slides today before we get into the real content. And Jeff and Stephen are going to cover the real content, so I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Jeff Hunter. I am the lead sales engineer for the MSP side here at Ninja North America.
And I'm Stephen Murphy. I'm the senior technical advisor for the marketing team. I was in the MSP world for 13 years, and I've just started with Ninja this month.
We've brought Stephen over to the dark side and corrupted him to our ways. So he's a great resource for us. You'll see him around a lot on our webinars. So say hi to Stephen if you haven't already met him out in the community, where he's been a champion for Ninja for a long time. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the content. As I said, I've got a couple slides. The vast majority of today will be in the Ninja platform, so don't run off. And we do have our $100 gift card giveaway that we will announce at the end before Q&A. We won't hold you hostage to the questions, but we will hold you hostage until the end of the presentation. All right, so let's jump in. I've got a couple of administrative things to walk through. I want everyone to be working with the same set of terms and assumptions before we jump in, so no one gets confused or lost with what Stephen and Jeff are talking about. So just a couple things to go through when we talk about automation in Ninja. We have a couple ways to deliver automations in Ninja. The first is scheduled scripts. If you're an existing customer of Ninja, you know that's part of our policies. These are used to deploy automations or groups of automations at set times via a policy. We also have scheduled tasks, which are very similar to scheduled scripts, but instead of using the policy framework, you can deploy them to a group of endpoints regardless of their policy. You're going to see heavy use of conditions today, where those are triggered automations. So when we use a monitor to detect a state change or a health or performance issue or an event, and then trigger an automation once that threshold is met. You can trigger automations via ad hoc script delivery, so deploy a script and that will kick off a bunch of other things. And then finally, custom fields. We're going to make heavy use of custom fields today. These are editable custom fields at the device level where you can store data. You also do have custom fields in documentation that I think we are going to touch on briefly today. Those can also be read to from scripts. And are very similar to custom fields, except they're at the organization level instead of the device level. Not a lot to learn here. I just want to make sure everyone's using the same terms, so it's easy to follow along with Stephen and Jeff. I also want to give you a framework for how we're going to actually walk through these complex automations. And this should also be your framework for setting up complex automations after this webinar when you go out and do it yourself. So you'll notice that we walk through this as we go along. The first is generally you're going to want to start by setting up your custom fields and determining the scope of those custom fields. We do want to make sure that those custom fields are readable and writable via scripts before you get started. That's quick pro tip there. Check to make sure that it is readable and or writable via scripts depending on your needs. The next step would be to actually write the script or scripts that you're going to want to deploy. Most likely, you're going to want to test those before you actually move on to adding them to policies and deploying them. So you're going to want to write them, test them out, make sure they write to the custom field in the format that you want. The third step would be to actually add them to the policies. This is sort of the deployment piece. Make sure that they're triggering as expected, making sure, again, that they're writing to the custom fields as expected. And then finally, obviously, we all know in IT, there are a lot of edge cases. There are a lot of things that work as intended 98% of the time, but you are going to want to deploy and test and validate that that's working across your environment. With that, I have one last slide before we get into the core content here. I had to add this in to get us to be allowed to do this webinar. The first is we're doing these demonstrations live. Scripts usually run pretty quick, but alerts and monitors and custom fields can take a little bit longer to update. So we may need to come back to something to show you the final result, again, because we are doing this live. Also, because we are doing this live, if something goes wrong, I'm just going to blame the scripts that we misconfigured something. But we'll figure out how to get around it and show you the end result. And then second, Stephen and Jeff are experts in their craft, and they have created some scripts that you will be seeing during this webinar. We wanted to set those up so we can show you these complex automations live. That being said, as good as they are at scripting, none of the scripts that you'll see here are officially supported or available via Ninja. If you take a screenshot and go out and try to replicate these, you're on your own. We don't officially support them. So take any kind of scripting you see here with a grain of salt, that you should go out and validate and test and ensure that you understand it before you go and replicate it. With that, let's dive into the actual automations we're going to be covering today. We have 3 automations we're going to walk through, and these are intended to be complex multi-step automations. We may actually even be overly complicating them intentionally so that we can show you different ways of accomplishing things in Ninja. The contents of the examples, for example, auto installing applications or demoting someone from a user group, aren't the real takeaway of the webinar. The takeaway here is giving you a framework and a set of examples that you can replicate to your own use cases in your own environment. So even if these particular automations aren't something that you want to replicate, the process of building them and the framework that we go through to get to the end result should be replicable in your environment to your own use cases in your own automations. And that's kind of what you should take away from it today. So we are going to start with Jeff going through a complex way to auto install applications. He's then going to dive into automatically demoting a user from a security group based on a comparison list of intended administrators. And then Steven's going to get into detecting and removing guest Wi-Fi accounts if someone's not supposed to be on them. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jeff, and we can get into the real meat here.
Sounds great. Thank you, Pete. And hopefully everybody can see my screen right here. We're going to go ahead and start with, like Pete said, heavily into custom fields. How do we create those custom fields? We'll go to configuration and then devices. In this case, we have 2 separate types of custom fields. One that is role-based. And so this is ideal for if you want to capture information that's maybe just for servers, but you don't want to have that same information or don't want to capture it for your workstations, or vice versa. But then we also have global custom fields, which is going to be what we're largely dealing with today. Global custom fields are, of course, applicable to every device type. I've already created most of my fields here. You can see my application management section, which is going to be the focus of this first demonstration, where we're going to show ways that you can easily deploy applications through Ninja, but really streamline that process of as new devices are brought in, they're automatically provisioned with the line of business applications that you need to give them. And what I've done here is primarily create a lot of different checkboxes. You can see here I've created a Malwarebytes checkbox. I've created a Gravity Zone checkbox for deploying whatever antivirus application I want to use for these devices. And in this case, I am having this as both readable and writable for scripts so that I can read from this within a script, use that as a variable if I need to, but then for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to be writing to that checkbox indicating when I want to take action and install that particular application on that device. So those are our custom fields here that we'll create. I'm creating a few different here. One is the checkbox to install Bitdefender Gravity Zone, and then I've also created a text field here That is going to be so that I can write a timestamp of when exactly the application was installed on the device so that I can refer to it in the future if I have a need for it. You can also use that field as sort of a yes, no, if the application is installed. If you need to automate further deployment, further script modifications to devices that have Bitdefender Gravity Zone, you can go ahead and easily target using that custom field, because any of these custom fields, in addition to being able to read and write from them, they're also searchable. So you can use our search functionality to identify machines based on the output that you're capturing from scripts. And that could be anything in batch, anything in PowerShell, or anything in shell that we're capturing with these custom field scripts. I'll now go into my scripting library. I've already added in a few different scripts here in my custom fields section. One right here that I'll reference is going to be the script to install Bitdefender Gravity Zone. The rest of the applications that I'm installing today, they are largely going to be installed using our install application script, which is a default script that we provide here at Ninja that allows you to upload up to a 1 GB MSI or exe to our servers that will then deploy via an MSI exec command. This is getting a little bit more complex because I did want to show, as Pete mentioned, the ability to refer to documentation fields as well. So we've got custom fields, those are at the device level. And then we also have documentation fields, which allow you to store information at the organization or at the customer level, and then reference that within a script. And in this case, you can see I'm downloading Bitdefender Gravity Zone, but I'm also pulling the package ID. And you'll see this with a lot of different antivirus applications, package ID, customer ID, site ID, something of that nature that's stored at the customer level so that way everybody gets the appropriate package installed. And so in this case, what I've done is I've stored my license key, my package ID, under a documentation field at the organization level. I'll come in here, and I'll go to my Ninja Lab here, and then I'll go into my documentation fields. And then I've stored my application as Bitdefender Gravity Zone, the basic version, basic data here, but then the package ID that I'm using. And so I can automatically run a script, one script across my entire environment that is going to always pull the appropriate package ID. So I don't have to reinvent the wheel and constantly create additional scripts that are using a unique package ID. I'm going to come back
Jeff,
into, yes, sir.
One just quick piece of feedback. We've got a lot of people from our AMIA team here. If you could slow down a tiny bit,
of course,
just for people with
absolutely
English as a first language. Thank you.
So we can see here, we're pulling that variable and then we're referring it right here as a parameter when we're executing our MSI exec command to install Bitdefender Gravity Zone. And then I'm also pulling the date here and then writing that into my Gravity Zone installed field so that I know exactly when this application was installed. Now, that's one script there that I'm using to install applications. Like I said, that's a custom PowerShell script, but we also have that default built-in install application script that's going to be ideal for running any sort of MSI or exe that you're looking to deploy. I'm also going to bring up another field script here, which is my checkbox field management script. And essentially what this is allowing me to choose a field that I want to affect, and then the value that I want to give that field. And in the case of a checkbox, it would be 0 or 1 to uncheck or check the box. True or false also works as well. And this just allows me the easy ability, again, without having to create a variety of scripts, way too many scripts to manage. I can use one script and then just type in the parameter down here if I have a preset parameter that I want to continuously use, or I can just type it in whenever I go to run the script. So what does that look like functionally at the device level? If I go to this back office machine here, and then I go into my custom fields, you'll see my application management section. Now, right at the very top, I have an application commit checkbox, and this is essentially a master switch here. I can check a box right here to select the applications I want to deploy, like something like Bitdefender Gravity Zone, but it's not actually going to install because I have added in all of my automations to use this two-step process. One, the application you want to deploy has to be checked, but then I also have a master switch at the very top that also has to be checked so that I'm only deploying applications when both boxes have been checked. It allows you to make sure that nothing is getting installed inadvertently. You have to have a two-step process where both boxes are checked before anything is actually being deployed. Now, I could go ahead and manually check this box here. If I went in and edited this, you'll see that I can go ahead and check the box for Bitdefender Gravity Zone or for Malwarebytes, Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, anything that I've preset up here. And it'll go and then execute the command to install those applications. But this is an automation webinar, so we want to know, how do we automate that process? And so now we're going to go into the policy level. Ninja is heavily policy based, so this is where you're accomplishing a lot of the different automation that you're looking to get done. And so right here under scheduled scripts, I can go ahead and create a script to check the box for my line of business applications. So what applications are installed on devices belonging to this policy? Here's where I set that. I can set this to run once immediately, meaning that as soon as any new device joins this policy, it's going to go ahead and run that script on that new device, as well as all the other devices already on this policy. And then right here, I can use my checkbox field management to say, all right, Google Chrome, a 1 to go ahead and check that box. Same for Bitdefender Gravity Zone. And then finally, my application commit here, my master switch to ensure that these applications will actually install after I've selected them. So that's really the true benefit of Ninja and the automation is as these devices are joining the policy, we're checking the box there, we're initiating those actions, we're triggering our custom fields, and that is done under our conditions. Now, you can respond to any condition within Ninja with a script. Great example here is any service that we can monitor. We can go ahead and respond to that service that may be stopped in this case with a script that goes ahead and automatically starts that service back up. Now, in this particular case, what we're doing with something like Bitdefender Gravity Zone is we're monitoring for if the application commit checkbox has been checked and if the Bitdefender Gravity Zone checkbox has been checked. And then in response to that, we're running 2 scripts. One to initiate the Bitdefender Gravity Zone installation, write the date into that custom field I mentioned, and then another box here or another script here to uncheck the Bitdefender Gravity Zone checkbox. This is closing the loop so that your automations don't continuously run forever trying to install Bitdefender Gravity Zone over and over again. This is essentially your final step here to say, hey, we have installed the application, we can uncheck the box, and that'll prevent your automations from running continuously. Now, that is one example on application deployment. I'd say it's a fairly common one that we see here at Ninja. How do you install applications? But more importantly, how do you streamline that and make that as efficient as possible? And this is a little bit of work to get set up, but in the long run, it really gives you the flexibility that you want to accomplish different actions. So say, for instance, right here, you give, via this section here, you give your help desk technicians the easy ability to go into the actual device level and initiate the installing of these applications. But because these can be affected by scripts, you can also use this as essentially a repository, a sort of centralized place where you can have these actions take effect and you can reference them from within other scripts. So right now, this is the best method, I would say, to call other scripts from within another script within Ninja. So if you have a script that's running and you want to go ahead and call another script, calling it via checkbox that you're monitoring with custom fields is an ideal way to use Ninja to leverage conditional actions, something we'll talk about a little bit later here. For now, I want to go ahead and move on to our next example, which is user management.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes.
I'd like to pause really quick. We've got, I think we might want to summarize this first automation a little bit. People are a little bit lost. So if you don't mind, I'd like to summarize kind of what you've gone through at a high level so that we can catch people up a little bit. So I'll hop in if you don't mind. What we're trying to accomplish with this particular automation is to use a couple different features in Ninja to make automation replicable. And yes, as everyone's saying, you're doing a fantastic job, Jeff. Sorry, I'm panic inserting myself here. We're using a combination of custom fields, scripts, and policies to trigger automations. The custom field is going to store data that's pulled via a script or that you manually input. The script is going to read that information. And then your policies are going to detect the state of the custom field to trigger another automation, if that makes sense. So in this case, for example, we have our application management section that Jeff has built. These are all custom fields. And for each of these application types, Malwarebytes, Bitdefender Gravity Zone, Google Chrome, we're using a checkbox to say, yes, I want to install that application. Once those are checked to yes, and once we've decided to have the application commit checkbox checked here, we are then going to detect that via condition and trigger the install of an application. I think that's a pretty quick, good overview, but let me know if that clarifies things. Unless you also think you have something you want to add, Jeff.
No, I think that was a great high-level overview, and my apologies for going a little too quickly. I'll try to slow down a little bit.
All right, I think we can move on to the next one. I don't know that I was any better at summarizing.
But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about a different example using custom fields. And this one's a little bit more in depth. It's not just relating to checkboxes. Down here, we have our user management, and we've got information being populated in two of these sections by scripts. The first one right here is a script that's running a PowerShell command to retrieve a list of every single local user account on this machine. You can see we have our basic administrator account, default account, guest account, and then down here, the unauthorized admins box, what this is doing is we have a PowerShell script that is running to check for any unauthorized admins, and we're setting that right here. So we have the ability to set this custom field with a list of users who are authorized to have administrator access. We then have another script that is running, checking against what users actually have administrator access on the machines against this field that I have highlighted right here. So anybody who does not match the criteria here of being in this box, in this case, the WDAG utility account, if they are not in this box and they have administrator access, they'll show in this box right here whenever we run this script. And in this case, there's no currently found unusual local admins. There's nobody who we don't expect to have administrator access who currently has it on this device. But let's go ahead and change that. I'm now going to go ahead and run a script here to go ahead and create an administrator user. I'm going to say this is a hostile attacker, and then I'm going to say that password is security, very secure. We'll go ahead and run that script, and that's going to go ahead and then create a local user on this account. Now, this user is going to have administrator access, but they're not in the authorized admins checkbox. And that means the script that we're running to go ahead and alert us to if there's anybody with unauthorized administrator access is going to let us know who has that access. And we can come in here, you'll see that we created our hostile attacker user over here, and then we can go into our policy conditions. Now, our policy conditions right here, we are using script result condition, which is an ability that Ninja has to run a script on a recurring basis and alert you if there's unexpected output contained in that condition. Now, in this case, we're looking for if there's any unauthorized users with administrator access here. And right here, I'm alerting if it does not contain my safe phrase here, which is no unusual local admins found. If that is not in that checkbox there or in that text box there, I'm then going to raise an alert. I can use that to then raise a ticket that, hey, there's an unauthorized administrator who has access on this particular device. If we close out here and then go back to our actual device, you'll see that we have a whole bunch of alerts that have now triggered. Now, we have multiple layers here, which I would always recommend for anything involving user security. And then in this case, we're monitoring Windows event logs for anybody who has a user account that was created. So you can see I've created my user account. You can see my hostile attacker here. So I have visibility from that perspective. But because we have that script result condition running continuously, it's always going to be updating this field down here. It's right now set to 2 minutes. So right here, I should see an update. You can see it was updated about a minute ago. Right here, I'll see an update of anybody who is an unauthorized user. Now, the automation aspect of this is when we detect there's an unauthorized user, we're going to go ahead and automatically remove them. So we're going to detect that, hey, there's an unauthorized user, and then based on what that unauthorized user's name is, we're going to run a script, pull from that custom field, and then remove that user. So if I go back into my policy conditions here, you can see I'm monitoring this custom field to remove anybody with unauthorized administrator access. So if anything is found in here that does not equal my safe phrase here of no unusual local admins found, I'm then running this script here to delete the user. Now, what user is it deleting? It's pulling from that custom field that we have at the device level that gives us the name of the user account that's hostile, which in this case is hostile attacker. And then it's executing a PowerShell command to remove that user. So taking action on a user, in this case, I'm removing the user. You could very easily just demote them to not be an administrator, removing them from that security group. But you can see it's an automated way of anytime you have anybody who could potentially have administrator access, if you don't know if they should have administrator access, or if you're simply unsure, you can sort of deactivate it, put it into a holding pattern where you have the time to address it and not have sort of a potentially active security scenario on your hands. How am I doing on speed, Pete?
This one I found much easier to follow. So, and it sounds like everyone is really, really enjoying this example.
Okay, great news. So let's go back here to the actual device level. So right here, you can see that we raised an alert based off of our check looking for anybody with who has administrator access, who's not authorized. It's given us who the person is. It's the hostile attacker user that I just created. But then over here, the custom fields condition was also triggered, and that's what's going to go ahead and automatically remove the user. And you can actually see this happening in real time over here on the activities feed. We can see the account has already been removed. We can see that we've gotten another alert indicating that this event ID has triggered, indicating that this administrator user has been removed from the group because they were deleted. And then this is all going to reset here. I can reset my security event IDs right here. But then my custom fields condition, this is all going to go ahead and automatically reset because we've remediated the condition. The script result condition is no longer active. And then this custom fields condition is also going to reset because we no longer have the administrator or an unauthorized administrator on this device.
Awesome. Hey, Jeff, do you know if you have a plan to post the scripts from this example to the dojo?
I do. Yeah, there's going to be specifically, I know there's been a lot of requests for the Bitdefender Gravity Zone script. So I'm definitely going to be posting that one. And I'll also be posting everything that we've shown here on the user management side as well, as soon as I have some time to write all that up.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jeff.
I think that kind of takes me through my examples. Pete, are you seeing anything in the chat that maybe I need to clarify or do a better job of expanding on?
No, I think this one was much easier to follow for the team. So I think we can move over to Stephen. Jeff, thank you so much for walking through those. Those were fantastic.
Of course.
Hey everyone, I hope my screen's now showing. In terms of this, I'm going to take you through detecting and remediating when a user joins the wrong wireless network. So typically what we used to see as an MSP, people would join the restricted guest Wi-Fi network or a restricted network for vendors. In schools, we would see them jump the corporate laptop over to the actual guest network. And the most common kind of responses we would get at the service desk level was, oh, I've lost my printers, I can't see the domain controller, I've lost my desktop icons, etc. Obviously, with the loss of resources, it raised and escalated issues at the service desk. And this whole process was to kind of reduce that. So in terms of this, we're going to go back to using a couple of custom rule fields. We are purely assigning them at the moment to laptops because typically desktops wouldn't have those wireless connections that you're going to monitor. The first one we're going to use is a join to guest network checkbox. That checkbox is purely going to be used later on as a true or false statement in the scripting. Is this device joined or is it not? So as a logic step, that flag can be used to trigger further automations. We're also going to return into a multi-line field the actual Wi-Fi networks on the device. So therefore, you know, we have joined eCorp guest, we have joined eCorporate, the corporate network, or whatever your specific organizational names would be. In terms of that, we're also going to pull back from the documentation fields as well. You may have saw a peek earlier when Jeff was running through his demo, but we're just recording a basic guest network field at the moment, and it is purely for text entry. In terms of that, on the actual eCorp network under the organization, we have eCorp guest listed. Once that comes over, we've obviously moved into the scripting stage. So as part of that, I've already made my Wi-Fi triggers for actually doing this, and I've also got my deletion of the guest Wi-Fi as well as retrieving the networks. If we start with the basic one, the logic is we're going to pull all the script. We're going to run through the script and we're going to actually pull out the wireless networks from the device. We're going to use the Ninja integration to pull in from Ninja what the guest network name is. And then we're just going to run through some very quick logic to say, yes, this is going to happen. What we're going to check is there actually a Wi-Fi adapter? Is the wireless interface missing? Two of the most common issues you'll find. And then after that, we're going to run the logic of pull all the networks out. Does it then match with the guest network? If it does match, we're then going to say, right, join to guest network is true, therefore we can trigger the rest of the automations. Once we go into the policies, we're going to run a scheduled script roughly every 5 minutes on this one, but we're going to run that get wireless network script. We're going to check, is it in there? Is it an unauthorized Wi-Fi name that's in the list? And we're going to monitor a custom condition for it. So we're going to monitor the custom field, and then we're going to follow a two-stage process. We're going to delete that guest Wi-Fi if it does exist. And then once we've done that, we want to then pull the wireless networks again and make sure it has disappeared from the logic. What we are also doing with this one, we're going to limit the reset interval every 3 minutes because we do want to attempt to run the script again. So kicking that over to the actual desktop. We have the custom fields already shown as e-corporate and join to the guest network no. Now, this is the downside with a live demo. It won't do this in real time enough. We'll be sat here for a couple of minutes whilst it does check in. So what I'm going to do is just trigger a custom script again to manually trigger the automation on this one. So we're going to trigger a guest Wi-Fi detection, which purely just triggers that field to now be true. And you'll see in the scroll at the side, that script's going to trigger that. That device will then check in and feed that data back to Ninja and say, yep, this field has now been updated, and then the automations will proceed. I can add the guest network on the device beside me, but in typical fashion, when we ran through the demo, it took a couple of minutes to trigger and it worked pretty much instantly. The few times I've done this today, it's taken about 5 minutes. So that's presently running through there now. And we should hopefully see a stream of events on the right-hand side saying, right, this output has been successful. It's pulled back the networks and it's already attempted to delete the guest Wi-Fi network. So it's a pretty simple automation, but it's one that definitely sort of resolves that workload at the help desk level. What you could also do to elevate this is add a custom toast notification and notify the users themselves. You're on an unauthorized network, please use the corporate guest network instead, along with any sort of custom messages you want. And then you would be able to kind of escalate and ensure that these people aren't contacting the service desk. I mean, all in all, it's a simple automation to reduce the workload at the service desk level.
Awesome, thank you so much, Stephen. It looks like that's all run. I think we're probably going to have a lot of questions. I'm gonna hop out and jump back to 2 sets of slides that we have really quick. I want to leave as much time for questions as possible. And based on the feedback that we have here, I just want to announce 2 things. One, as Jeff said, we will publish these scripts to the dojo. They will be available to you, and we will have the marketing team include a link to that. You'll need a Ninja account to see the scripts, but we will include a link to those scripts when marketing sends out the email with the recording. The second is, my hope is that our marketing team can actually take a lot of what we said and convert it to a follow-on blog post to make a step-by-step a little bit easier, to make replicating these a little bit easier for everyone. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and jump into a couple more slides, and then we'll get to Q&A. Okay. First, I just wanted to show up a couple real world use cases. We're not going to walk through these ones, but I think it's valuable to have ideas of automations that you can run through as you think about implementing this yourself. You know, when you think about the bang for your buck, there are a couple different areas, right? There are the complex processes that you can automate, things that take more time and take multiple steps and are prone to be screwed up. That's one area you can look at. The second is repetitive processes, things that you do over and over. If you're part of, if you use Reddit and troll those, troll the Reddit sites, you'll see, quite often the response to what are you automating is anything I touch more than twice. It may not be a great answer when you're looking for ideas, but it is a true answer. And so those repetitive processes are things to look at. And then finally, something we didn't touch on explicitly here, but additional monitoring. Ninja gives a lot of monitoring out of box, but there are definitely things that we don't give you, right from the get-go. So if there are particular things that you want to monitor, like, the user accounts on the device or any kind of security auditing you might want to do, or if you want to do a network speed test on a regular basis, those are all monitoring ideas that you can go and automate and write to custom fields as well. In addition, we do want to talk about how you can integrate automation into your ongoing work. And there are three areas that in our research and in our conversation with customers that we see often. The first is the low-hanging fruit. And this is the standard response you're going to see when you ask people, what are you automating? It's what are the things that are driving high volume tickets? What are you touching multiple times a week or month? What easy tasks, or multi-step tasks can be pulled down into essentially one script deployment? And then finally, what information are you gathering manually that can be automated and written to a custom field? So that's kind of the low-hanging fruit. And if you're going to leave here and go work on automation, this is where you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck and probably a lot of benefit quickly. The next is the more complex tasks. So what can you take away from remote access and do via scripts? Even with how fast remote access is, for example, in Ninja, that's an additional 30, 40, 50 seconds of connection time, orienting yourself to the environment, interrupting the end user, and then, doing the task. If you can take all of that time out and do it via a script, that's an automation that you should invest in. The next is one of my favorite answers I've seen is, what do people keep screwing up? That's a good target for an automation, right? So if something, even if it seems simple, if it's a lot of things that need to be done in order and it's prone to get screwed up one way or another, that's a really good target for investing in automation. And then last but not least, what can you do fully closed loop? What can you detect or monitor for, detect, automate remediation for, and then close out? If you can do that, that's a really good target for automation as well. Last but not least, the what full workflows can you automate? The first one that comes to mind is employee onboarding and offboarding. That's a really good example. And where can you use Ninja as a logic switch to route automation and tickets, right? So actually, Jeff, do you mind explaining this example? You had a really good way of explaining this, if you don't mind hopping in on this.
Yeah, sure. So it really related to, we could of course do a more complex PowerShell script using a bunch of conditional if statements, but essentially you can go ahead and use Ninja as the repository for those if statements. You can use Ninja to manage the conditional aspect. One example might be running an SFC scan, and then if there's any errors in that SFC scan, writing that into a custom field or writing the report, the error code, whatever it returns, into a custom field, then monitoring that custom field. You can go ahead and say, oh, SFC had an error code. Let's go ahead and automatically run a DISM scan, try and repair that. Then you can also monitor the DISM scan. If the DISM scan is not able to completely or successfully complete, you can then go ahead and raise a ticket off of that. DISM didn't successfully complete, but if it does, then you can go ahead and run SFC a second time. And then if SFC fails a second time, this would be using a different custom field. You can then raise a ticket based off of that. So like I said, using sort of step actions or conditional actions, using Ninja to kind of manage that so that you can have that place to store this information and not rely on using any other external third-party service, or building a very complex PowerShell script that it can be difficult to make sure that every scenario is covered. I think using Ninja to, like I said, as a repository for those conditional actions can really help streamline something that would otherwise be quite complex and more difficult to create.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. You're much better explaining these things than I am. All right, so that's the end of the presentation. I'm going to have Christine come on. She's our marketing coordinator to announce our $100 gift card winner today.
Awesome. Thanks, Pete. Hey, everyone. My name's Christine. I'm a marketing campaign coordinator here at NinjaOne. I hope we're all enjoying the webinar so far. I'm going to announce the $100 Amazon gift card winner. So if everyone can pop in the chat and say congratulations to Kevin Berry. Congratulations, Kevin. Be on the lookout for an email from me and I'll get that sent out to you. And that's awesome. It for me.
Thanks so much, Christine, and congratulations. Sorry, I talked right over you, Christine. I apologize. With that, we have about 15, 20 minutes left for questions. I imagine there's going to be a lot of them and they're going to be complex. So we'll go ahead and dive right in. The first one I want to address is from Jed Tauber here. Does automation work for Mac OS computers? I just want to get that one out of the way because I saw it a couple times. Everything we showed you was in Windows and using PowerShell because I think we're probably all more comfortable with those, those of us on the panel here. You can use shell script to deploy scripts in Mac OS, and you can write to custom fields using scripts, using shell script. And so yes, automation is perfectly possible using Mac or Linux or Windows. Unless, Jeff, you have any shading to that comment.
No, I think you nailed it. Shell script, we do support shell script for both Mac and Linux, so you still have the same ability to monitor these custom fields. You still have the same script result condition ability with both Mac and Linux that you would have with Windows machine. This was obviously very heavily focused on Windows devices, and while we don't have the scripts for those same automations, they could very easily be implemented through shell.
Awesome. So those of you who have questions, go ahead and add them in, and we're just going to read them down as we see them. I have a question here from Janice. Yeah, I'm not going to pronounce your last name. From Janice, he asked, is this installed on a Windows computer? So Ninja, the management console is cloud-based. The agent to monitor and manage a computer can be installed on Windows, Mac, or Linux devices. The automation, the brain and the management console is all in the cloud, so it's not installed on a device and managed locally. It's all managed via the cloud. All right, let me go through and see if I can find some that are particularly relevant here. Yeah,
there was one, Pete, that was asked in the chat and that I answered already that I did want to cover, but Ben asked a great question about, can you interact with these custom fields from the computer directly, not just through Ninja? And you can use access the custom fields using the Ninja RMM-CLI variable in command prompt to interact and write to custom fields to read from variables. So you can do this directly on a Ninja managed device as long as the agent is installed. It doesn't just have to be scripts run through Ninja. So anything that you might have on a server and task scheduler running locally on the device, that can also be used to interact with custom fields, not just strictly scripts running through the Ninja level like we were showing today.
You do need system or admin privileges for that though, right?
Correct. You would need essentially the CLI utility that we use. It does reside in the program data folder for Ninja RMM. So you would need to be running those commands from command prompt as an administrator, or at least have rights to the program data folder.
Awesome, thank you. I see Brandon here has a really good question. In concerns over custom fields growing out of control in size, is there any thought on making things like installed software contextually available from the endpoint object versus having to use a custom field stating whether a product is installed? So as of today, Brandon, custom fields, they're relatively new in Ninja. I think they're 6 months to a year old. Once you create a custom field, it's there. And you can't contextually show it or not. We do have some UI elements to make it a little bit easier to follow things along, but I understand where you're coming from, where you could have, if you're doing a lot of complex automations, you could have a lot of custom fields. I think the primary way to address that is to use role-based custom fields. So your server custom fields are only assigned to servers. Your workstations or laptop ones are only assigned to workstations and laptops. That will reduce some of that sprawl, but as of today, I think that's probably the only way to do it, unless Stephen or Jeff, you have any recommendations there.
I do not have any other ones.
Sorry, no.
No. Okay.
I did want to touch on a question that Jake had asked about exporting custom fields. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just very briefly so I can show that. Here we go. If we go to the search menu here, you'll see all of your devices. So right here, I'm at the search menu on the left-hand side. And then if I go up to the top right, you'll see an export option. And there's two different types of exports here. one that includes detailed device information, and that includes a lot of really good information like the serial number of the device, who the OEM manufacturer is, and also what version of Windows is on there. A lot of other very technical details like MAC address and public and private IP addresses, but also custom fields. So any of the information that you're collecting with these PowerShell and batch commands, like say if you want to generate a list of everybody across your entire environment who has an unauthorized administrator on their device, you can go ahead and create a CSV export here that has every single device, as well as what users have unauthorized or considered unauthorized admins. And then you can use that to kind of go to your customer, go to the organization and say, okay, here's where we need to do a little bit of cleanup to make sure that we're being more security conscious.
Awesome. I have two that I think will be quick. The first is there an option to reset all health alerts? I'm actually going to share my screen really quick here, if I can find my way around. Okay. If you go to alerts up here, this is at the global dashboard. Oh, there are no alerts right now. You can select all and you can reset them. You can also do that at the individual device level. If I go to, this is at the org level, I can do it as well, or I can go to an individual device and there's an alert tab. So yes, you can mass reset alerts. A follow-on, I think from the same person, is can Ninja email you when a certain custom field has been triggered? So I'll go ahead and and answer that as well. If I go into conditions and go into policies and conditions, what am I using here? This one. And I go to a custom fields monitor here. I am here now detecting if Bitdefender Gravity Zone is checked and application commit is checked. If I do that, I can then notify technicians. So here, if I send notifications, that will send an email. If email is enabled for that technician, it will send a notification letting you know that this condition has been met. There are other notification channels here as well. So I could create a ticket and use that to send an email, or I can use what's called notification channels. I unfortunately don't have any set up in this environment. But I could send a message via Slack or via webhook to Teams or to an email distribution list as well. So yes, we can communicate to you automatically when a custom field is triggered. Let's see. Sorry, there's lots of questions. I'm trying to read through them. Jeff, do you have one ready, or Stephen, do you have one ready that you want to answer?
I did have one question from Samuel regarding the unauthorized administrator script that I was showing earlier. The question was regarding if that can be set up to detect domain admins, not just local admins. Yes, it absolutely can. That script does include the ability to look for domain admins, and it will show you the domain, can be configured to run, show you the domain as well as the username.
Awesome. Just because I think this will be broadly helpful, Dan Tapley asked, where in Dojo can we find custom script commands such as writing to custom fields? I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple helpful Dojo articles. So for those of you who are new to Ninja or haven't used Ninja before, if you go up to the question mark here and go to the Dojo community, we have all of our documentation here as well as our community space. I'm going to start with community. Not to directly answer your question, but to show you our script share. For those of you who are looking for scripting ideas, who aren't scripting experts, you can come here and see a lot of either requests for or shared scripts that people have shared to accomplish specific outcomes. The scripts that we went through today will be posted here so that you can see them as well. So these are not Ninja created or endorsed or supported. So anything that you use from here, you have to validate and use and take full responsibility for. Ninja's not responsible for using any of these scripts. I don't know how many times I've said that, but I will continue to say it. Or if you want to go into actual documentation that is Ninja written, you can come in here and go to scripting, for example. So in particular, the question was about custom fields. I think oh, that is not where you'll find that. The particular couple of documents you're going to want to look at are custom fields. This is setting up custom fields. But if you want to use custom fields for scripting, we have this custom fields and documentation, CLI and scripting article here. This is going to walk through, it's very long. It's an incredibly long article here that will walk you through what you can accomplish with custom fields and scripting, as well as what custom field types can be written to or read from via scripts, and the actual syntax for using custom fields, writing to or reading from custom fields in different languages. So this is using the CLI. We also have examples from shell script and PowerShell, et cetera, and what they look like with different types. So for example, if you want to use dates, for example. So you can use this article to walk through setting up custom fields and scripting. All right, let's see what our next question is. Anthony here has a question. Maybe Jeff, you can take this. Can Ninja automation be used to mostly set up a laptop or computer for new staff? And if there's something in the dojo about this, can you please point me there?
Yeah,
Steve, did you want to...
Yeah, I was going to say that I don't think we have anything specifically in the dojo around sort of creating an onboarding process. But we certainly have an article on there about different ways to deploy software in conjunction with Ninja. And that would include something like what we talked about today is the initial example, which was installing applications and making sure that new devices to join a policy, new devices to an organization, or just provisioning a brand new device, period. You can make sure that they have the appropriate applications installed by using those checkboxes. I just use checkboxes because it was easy, nice way to make it accessible. And you can monitor for what devices or what applications need to be installed on that particular machine. The run once immediately functionality, which is available under the scheduled script section of policies, that is very, very important because that is a way for you to run a script across every single device on this in this policy. Now it'll run on every single online device. It'll wait for any offline devices to come back online. But then most importantly for sort of ongoing deployment and for provisioning new devices is as new devices join that policy. So new user comes on or new device is added to that policy, all you need to do is install the Ninja agent. And then as it joins the appropriate policy, you're seeing here is the eCorp Windows policy. We can then run that script automatically. As soon as that device joins into Ninja, joins that policy, it'll run that script. And you can configure that to make sure that the appropriate applications are installed. So essentially just by installing Ninja, if you have everything set up on the policy level, you can ensure that Gravity Zone is installed, that Firefox is installed, or Chrome is installed, whatever applications are necessary to the line of business operation. You can essentially have that as a set and forget, which is probably what I did not do a great job of explaining early in the call, but that's really the goal there with the application deployment, is to allow you the ability to make sure that all your devices have the applications installed that they need in a quick, easy way that also allows you to, as Peter said, replicate it and have it be an ongoing factor in making sure your operation is streamlined and efficient.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Sorry, Pete. I'll just kick in from an industry perspective as well. So as a managed service provider at the beginning of COVID, we had a number of clients who were panicking. You know, everyone's at home, they're suddenly locked down and laptops are hurtling towards them on whatever carrier would take them. As part of that, we actually started rolling out Intune heavily for those clients. And the first step it did was roll out the Ninja agent because we could guarantee our setup scripts would run and configure the device with the way we wanted it. The Intune policies would also ensure those scripts had ran and that they were now compliant with the policies and the scripts we had ran on the device. If you're running hybrid as well, you can do the same process. I appreciate that kind of touches on a call for another question that was asked further up about how to deploy it. Honestly, it depends on what access you've got to the device. Intune white glove deployment and Intune deployment where people just sign in with a staff email address at an organization is the perfect way to go about this. If you're not getting hands on the device, get them to sign in with their corporate email address, have Intune deploy it, and you can guarantee your RM is provisioning this on the device. Ninja installs in about a minute. It doesn't matter that the install is out of date. It will update within a couple of minutes to the latest version that's available, and then the device is going to run through whatever policies and setups and configs you have set up in Ninja. and it makes for a pretty seamless process. We took an organization on 30 people. We still haven't seen them today. So obviously I've left them in a good state where they can just sign in with an address and go away and work.
One other addition to that is if you are on a domain, you can use our Active Directory discovery and deployment capability. You can add your you have to have the agent on a domain controller, and you can go ahead and do a scheduled deployment. I don't have one in here, so I can't show it, but you choose the domain controller, and Ninja will detect any new devices added to that domain that don't have a Ninja agent and deploy that out to it as well. So that's another method. One addition to the initial question about large-scale onboarding is, the automations we went through today were more complex and multi-step, right? But a lot of what you're doing is probably standardized, right? So in a policy, you don't necessarily have to use custom fields. If all of your endpoints get Bitdefender or ESET or Sophos, you don't have to do anything complex here. I can just schedule a script and say, I want to install ESET, and I'll run it once immediately, and I'll deploy ESET to all of my endpoints. So if a lot of your endpoints have a lot of standardization, if there are 10, 15 applications, that's a lot. But if there are a certain number of applications that go out, you can just install them as a scheduled script, run once immediately. Same with configurations. If you have power plans you want to go out, or if you make configuration changes to the endpoint or any registry edits that you might have to do at scale, like all of those things can be done without any of the logic and automation, like complexity we talked about today. They can just be deployed as scheduled scripts. It's only sort of the stuff that you want to do conditionally that needs the more complex automation we talked about today. That's fair. I think we have time enough for one last question. Hopefully we can find one that's broadly applicable.
Right at the bottom, there's a really lovely question there. We've used Chocolatey to install software. Do you folks have any plans to integrate natively with that? And I appreciate this rolls straight into what Jeff was doing as part of setting up this demo.
So officially, we don't have an integration with Chocolatey. It is fairly easy to download it and use it to install applications via Ninja. Jeff, do you want to talk through the process really briefly?
Yeah, sure. And Chocolatey is great because a lot of those commands are simply going to be one-line commands that you can use with Ninja. So you just essentially have to copy and paste whatever the command would be to install Chocolatey. I know we do have examples of that in our dojo, so you can certainly find scripts that other Ninja partners have used to make sure that Chocolatey does get installed in that dojo. But then whenever you need to run a script, you can create a script to install that application. One thing that I think might be useful is people I mentioned or saw that when I created the admin account, I just typed it in whenever I went to launch the script. Because whenever you launch a script in Ninja, you get two options. One, to select what credentials you want to run the script with. I was using system for pretty much everything we saw here today, but then also the ability to input any preset parameters that you want to use. And that gives you the ability, if you have a script like, say you want to install an application, you can build in a list into the script that you can use to go ahead and do the install Bitdefender Gravity Zone one here. And you'll see that I can use this, the credentials that I want to use, and then the preset parameter. Now you can give yourself a drop-down menu by adding this into the actual script itself. But if your script accepts parameters, you can go ahead and just add in the parameter here, type it in, and it will install. And that's ideal for something like Chocolatey because it's going to be a similar command to install applications through Chocolatey. And so what you can do is, instead of having 30, 40, 50 different scripts for Chocolatey in your library, you can have one script that you then have either a preset list to choose from, or you can go ahead and just type it in whenever you go to run the script like we are right here.
Awesome. We are at time, and there are probably 25, 30 unanswered questions. I apologize. I thought we'd get to most of them, but we haven't been able to. I want to make a quick pitch for you stealing more of Jeff's time, because that's what he's here for. Every month we have what's called a partner office hours. It's for existing customers, where you can come and ask Jeff any question that you want, and he will walk you through how to do just about anything in Ninja. It's a free-for-all. We don't have any planned content, so it's an hour where you just get to ask Jeff questions and he tells you best practices and how to do things. If we didn't get to your question, one, you can always reach out to your account manager and we can get those questions answered. Two, you can come to the partner office hours and Jeff can walk you through how to do certain things and hopefully answer your questions live. But I want to thank everyone for joining us. There will be more resources coming out around this webinar, and we will share them with you as they come in. And yeah, thank you, Stephen and Jeff, for doing the heavy lifting here.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.